Okay, here's a 1 chord. Here's a 2 chord on the same root. 3 chord and a 4 chord. 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord. Now those chords will provide the context so that when you practice your 7 scale shapes, they actually sound like the modes instead of merely one of the scale shapes. So you could play all 7 scale shapes in different places and it'll sound like a 1 chord. And then you can play the 7 scale shapes, but starting with this one. So it's everything in the key of G basically, but it's going to sound like A Dorian. And then you can play everything in the key of F, it's going to sound like A Phrygian with this context, because it sounds like an A chord, it doesn't sound like an F chord. And then when you go to Lydian, it's going to sound like an A Lydian chord, even though you're playing notes that are borrowed from the key of E. And then when you go to the 5 chord, you're borrowing from the key of D, but it's going to sound like an A Mixolydian because you're providing the context of A Mixolydian. And then so on, Aeolian, that's a sus2 with a flat 6. It really sounds like an Aeolian chord. There's no other chord in the major, no other major mode that has that chord in it. So that's you can play notes borrowed from the key of C, but it's going to sound like an Aeolian mode when you play it. And then a Locrian. Okay, so if you can play all the scale shapes starting the same root with those chordal contexts, then it's going to sound like the modes instead of the scale shapes, even though you're still developing the muscle memory of the scale shapes. Make sense? So learn the 7 scale shapes, but if you want them to sound like the modes instead of merely 7 scale shapes in one key, then you play with this context. Again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now those aren't the only chords you can do in those for those modal sounds, but that'll get you going. Okay, see ya.